Jimi Hendrix was in the middle of Purple Haze when he saw security pushing a blind 9-year-old girl away from the stage. He stopped playing immediately, put down his guitar, and what he did next left 15,000 people in tears. It was September 8, 1968, at the Seattle Center Coliseum. Jimi Hendrix was coming home. After conquering London and becoming a worldwide sensation, he was finally performing in his hometown of Seattle, the city where he'd grown up poor, where he'd been told he'd never amount to anything, where he dreamed of being a musician while sweeping floors and washing dishes. The show had been sold out for weeks. 15,000 people packed into the Coliseum, most of them knowing Jimi from his childhood. There were kids he'd gone to school with, neighbors who remembered him practicing guitar on the porch, teachers who'd kicked him out of class for drawing guitars in his notebooks instead of paying attention. For Jimi, this wasn't just another concert. This was vindication. This was proof. This was him showing everyone who doubted him that he'd made it. The show started with fire, and the crowd went insane. Then Foxy Lady, and people were dancing in the aisles. By the time Jimi launched into Purple Haze, the third song of the set, the energy in the arena was electric. But then, something happened that nobody expected.
In the third row, center section, a young girl named Sarah Thompson was experiencing something she'd never experienced before. Sarah had been born completely blind. She'd never seen a sunset, never seen her mother's face, never seen the color purple or any color at all. But she could hear, and she loved music. Sarah's parents had brought her to the concert even though they weren't sure she'd enjoy it. She couldn't see the lights, couldn't see Jimi's showmanship, couldn't see the spectacle that everyone else was watching. But from the first note, Sarah was transfixed. She'd never heard live music before. Records at home were one thing, but this, the volume, the vibration, the way the bass rumbled through her chest, the way Jimi's guitar seemed to fill the entire space around her, this was different. This was overwhelming and beautiful. Sarah was swaying to the music, her hands moving like she was trying to touch the sound. Her parents were watching her with tears in their eyes. They'd never seen their daughter so happy, so connected to something. But the seats in the third row weren't good enough for Sarah. She wanted to be closer. She wanted to feel the music even more. So she did what any 9-year-old would do. She started moving toward the stage. Her parents didn't notice at first. They were watching Jimi, lost in the music themselves. By the time they realized Sarah had slipped away, she was already at the barrier between the audience and the stage, her hands outstretched toward the sound, trying to touch whatever was making that beautiful noise.
Security guards saw her immediately. A small child at the barrier was a safety concern. They didn't know she was blind. They just saw a kid who needed to get back to her seat. 2 security guards approached Sarah. One of them took her arm and started pulling her away from the barrier. Sarah, confused and scared, not understanding why she was being taken away from the music, started crying and resisting. "I just want to hear better," she was saying. "Please, I just want to hear." But in the noise and chaos of the concert, the guards couldn't hear her. They just saw a child throwing a tantrum, and their job was to maintain order. So they started pulling her more forcefully toward the back of the arena. That's when Jimi saw them. He was in the middle of the guitar solo in Purple Haze, his eyes closed, lost in the music. But something made him open his eyes and look down. He saw 2 large security guards dragging a small girl who was crying and reaching back toward the stage. Jimi stopped playing mid-note. The sudden silence was jarring. Mitch Mitchell kept drumming for a few seconds before he realized something was wrong and stopped too. The bass faded out. 15,000 people went from screaming and dancing to confused silence in about 5 seconds. Jimi stepped to the microphone. His voice, usually smooth and quiet, was sharp with authority.
"Hold on," he said. "What's happening down there?" The security guards froze. Everyone in the arena turned to look at them. "Why are you taking that little girl away?" Jimi asked. One of the guards spoke up, his voice defensive. "She was at the barrier, sir. Safety protocol." "She wasn't hurting anybody," Jimi said. "Bring her here." The guard hesitated. "Sir, we can't just—" "Bring her to me," Jimi repeated. His tone wasn't angry, but it was absolutely firm. Right now. Sarah's parents had finally pushed through the crowd and reached the security guards. Sarah's mother was crying, trying to explain that her daughter was blind, that she wasn't causing trouble, that she just wanted to be close to the music. The guards, now thoroughly confused and embarrassed, looked up to Jimi for guidance. "Bring all 3 of them up here," Jimi said, gesturing to the side of the stage. "Security, help them up." The arena was completely silent now. 15,000 people watching to see what would happen next. Sarah's parents, stunned and overwhelmed, were escorted to the side stairs leading up to the stage. One of the guards picked up Sarah and carried her up. When they reached the stage, Jimi set down his guitar on its stand and walked over to meet them. He knelt down so he was at Sarah's eye level. "Hey there," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she said, her voice small and scared. "Sarah, I'm Jimi. Are you okay?" Sarah nodded, but she was still crying a little.
That's when Jimi noticed something. Sarah wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were open, but they weren't focused on anything. She was looking slightly past him, toward the sound of his voice, but not at his face. "Sarah," Jimi said gently, "can you see me?" Sarah shook her head. "I'm blind," she said. "I can't see anything, but I can hear you. Your music is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Jimi was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up and spoke to Sarah's parents. "Is it okay if I show Sarah something?" Sarah's mother nodded, too emotional to speak. Jimi took Sarah's hand. "Come with me," he said. He led her to center stage, to where his guitar was waiting on its stand. The crowd watched in absolute silence as Jimi picked up his white Stratocaster and sat down on the stage floor, cross-legged. He pulled Sarah down to sit in front of him. "Sarah," Jimi said, "you said you can hear the music, right?" "Yes," Sarah said. "But you can't see it." "No." "Well," Jimi said, "I'm going to help you feel it. Is that okay?" Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Jimi positioned his guitar across his lap and took both of Sarah's small hands in his. Gently, he placed her hands on the body of the guitar.
"Keep your hands right there," he said. "Don't move them, just feel." Then Jimi started playing. Not Purple Haze or any of his famous songs. He played something slow and gentle, something melodic. As he played, Sarah's hands felt the vibrations of the guitar body. She felt every note as it resonated through the wood and strings. Her eyes went wide with wonder. Her mouth opened in a silent "oh" of amazement. She'd heard music before, but she'd never felt it like this. Every note was a physical sensation, a vibration that traveled from the guitar into her hands and through her whole body. Jimi played for about 3 minutes, a gentle, improvised melody that seemed to flow from somewhere deep inside him. The crowd watched in complete silence. Many people were crying. Sarah's parents were sobbing openly. Sarah, sitting on that stage with her hands on Jimi Hendrix's guitar, was smiling bigger than she'd ever smiled in her life. When Jimi finished the song, he leaned close to Sarah. "Did you feel that?" "Yes," Sarah said, her voice filled with joy. "It was like the music was dancing in my hands."
Jimmy smiled. That's exactly what it is. Music isn't just sound, Sarah. It's vibration. It's energy. You might not be able to see it, but you can feel it just as much as anyone else can. Maybe even more. He took Sarah's hands and placed them on different parts of the guitar. The neck, the pickups, the bridge. Every part vibrates differently, he explained. High notes feel different than low notes. Fast playing feels different than slow playing. You can feel all of it. Then Jimmy stood up, helped Sarah to her feet, and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "this is Sarah. She can't see, but she just taught me something important. She reminded me that music isn't about what you can see. It's about what you can feel. And feeling is more important than seeing any day." The crowd erupted in applause. Not the screaming, wild applause of a rock concert, but the kind of genuine, emotional applause that comes from witnessing something truly special. Jimmy walked Sarah back to her parents, but before he let her go, he did something that nobody expected. He took off the leather strap from around his neck, the one that held his favorite guitar pick, and placed it around Sarah's neck. "This is my lucky pick," Jimmy said. "I've used it to play some of my favorite songs. I want you to have it, so whenever you listen to music, you can hold it and remember that you don't need eyes to see beauty. You can feel it." Sarah hugged Jimmy as hard as a 9-year-old could hug. He hugged her back, and when he stood up, there were tears on his face. Jimmy helped Sarah and her parents back off stage. Then he picked up his guitar, walked back to the microphone, and said, "Okay, where were we? Oh yeah, Purple Haze." He launched back into the song right where he'd left off, and the crowd went wild. But the energy had changed. It wasn't just excitement now. It was emotion. It was connection. It was 15,000 people who just watched something beautiful happen and wanted to be part of it. After the show, Jimmy spent an extra hour backstage with Sarah and her family. He showed her all his guitars, let her feel each one while he played different styles of music. He introduced her to his bandmates. He made her feel like the most important person in the world. Before they left, Sarah's father shook Jimmy's hand. "You have no idea what you just did for her," he said. "She's always felt different, left out. Tonight, you made her feel special. You made her feel like her blindness doesn't matter." Jimmy shook his head. "It doesn't matter. Sarah experiences music in a way most people never will. That's a gift, not a limitation." The story of what happened at that Seattle concert spread quickly. Newspapers ran articles. Other musicians heard about it and were inspired. But more importantly, Sarah Thompson's life changed. She'd always loved music, but after meeting Jimmy, she understood that she could be part of music in ways she'd never imagined. She started learning instruments. She learned to play by feel and by ear, just like Jimmy had shown her. By the time she was 15, she was an accomplished pianist. By 20, she was teaching music to other blind children, showing them that they could feel what they couldn't see. Sarah kept that guitar pick around her neck for the rest of her life. She wore it to every performance, every lesson, every important moment. When she got married, she wore it under her wedding dress. When she gave birth to her children, she held it in her hand. In 2018, 50 years after that concert, Sarah Thompson gave an interview for a documentary about Jimi Hendrix. She was 59 years old, a successful music teacher with hundreds of students. "Jimi Hendrix stopped his concert for me," she said in the interview, holding up the leather strap with the guitar pick. "He didn't have to do that. He was famous. I was nobody. But he saw me struggling, and he stopped everything to help me. He gave me more than music that night. He gave me confidence. He gave me purpose. He showed me that being different isn't being less. The documentary showed footage of Sarah teaching a class of blind children how to play guitar, using the same technique Jimi had used with her, having them feel the vibrations, understand the music through touch rather than sight. "I teach them what Jimi taught me," Sarah said in the interview, "that music isn't something you watch or see. It's something you feel. And anyone can feel it, no matter what they can or can't see." Jimi Hendrix died just 2 years after that Seattle concert. He never got to see what Sarah Thompson would become, never got to know how his simple act of kindness would ripple out through decades, touching hundreds of lives. But that's the thing about kindness. You don't always get to see the results. You just do what feels right in the moment and trust that it matters. On September 8, 1968, Jimi Hendrix stopped his show for a blind girl. He could have let security remove her. He could have finished his song and moved on. He had 15,000 other fans to think about. But he didn't. He stopped everything to help one 9-year-old girl feel what she couldn't see. And in doing so, he reminded all of us that the most important parts of life, beauty, music, connection, love, aren't things we see with our eyes. They're things we feel with our hearts. If this story of compassion and human connection moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that kindness can change lives. Have you ever witnessed someone stop everything to help another person? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video for more untold stories of humanity behind the legends.